Hello again. This is Ramirez with Tidewater Renaissance Fighting Arts, and we're at part two of a two-part series on the weapons of Harnischechten. And as I said before, being a little fancy today, I'm wearing one of my chaperone, which I would wear normally, sometimes with my armor when I'm not wearing my helmet, sometimes wearing them at before the fighting event or after the fighting event. And I got to tell you, another little secret here, free tip from me. If you own a chaperon like this one, which was made by Spez Medieval Market, get some bling for it. Uh, this little bit of jewelry I got earlier this week to bling this one out. And really, nothing says, okay, you're an important noble, rather than having something basic, add something to it. And in this case, jewelry, once again, you want to wear your wealth in medieval culture because that showcases that you actually have it. So this was something I think I got on Etsy. Might have been 15, $20, which when you consider how much these chaperone cost, is actually a fairly minimal cost that really enhances. So that's my free tip in this video. Do something to bling out your regular gear and you will stand out on the battlefield or on the tournament field or in court. So there you go. Now, as I said, we went through the smaller weapons, the dagger, the long sword. Now we're moving on to the big weapons, the pole weapons. So that's spears and pollaxes. Now, the ones I use, one I used when I started out is the Purple Heart Armory spears. This one does come with a rubber cap on the back end. Nice thing about these is twofold. You can get a completed, shipped, ready to go spear from Purple Heart Armory, and it's done. All the work for creating the poles is done. It's already attached, or if it isn't, I think with the spears it is. With the poleaxe, there's some assembly required. But we'll talk about that one later. It does have kind of that same bulbous end that the rubber rondels had. This is good. It's not a strict point. The arguments against it is that it is too flexible and bendy. I think that's a perk, and I think you can still make proper placement with these. The other is that they look rubber. They don't look, quote unquote, real, though we really don't use real spears in any capacity in what we do. Uh, I find these to be incredibly helpful. They are a smaller but solidly made ashwood shaft, which is good. They're very, very sturdy. I won't say you can't break them. I'm sure someone has, but I found it to be very, very reliable. They come in a variety of lengths, so depending on how you want to, what kind of size you're looking for, as I said, they do come with a rubber cap. Most of us do treat this, even though it is round, as a butt spike in tournament. If you're using others that do have butt spikes, they usually will count that. But if they're not, then they won't. But it's still nice to have a cap on here versus just the raw wood. If you're at an event, especially outdoors and stuff, a lot of times you tend to rest on your spear a little bit. You may lean on it, and this is a lot better than wearing out the wood on rocks or ground or tarmac, depending on where you're doing your fighting demonstrations. So, once again, it's a good deal, good price. And if you're in the U.S., they're in the U.S., so it's very easy to get a hold of. My other spear is the one we prominently use in the club right now, and we also use them, obviously, for demonstrations. These are steel blunted spear tips, and so they have a kind of round, kind of looks like a mini can at the end of the tip. It's technically big enough that it won't go through oculars. However, we still put the rubber tips on here because they are not the appropriate width by Decoven Accord. They really should have a tip on them. You'll hear me say that a lot. But they do have the rubber tips on them. Normally you get a set of these. I would warn you that they are not all made equal. I have brought this up in other videos. This is one of these spearheads, so you kind of take a look at what it looks like. It has kind of this round, kind of can-shaped tip at the end of it. However, this particular brand we don't use anymore. It was a cheaper one that we found, and while we were installing one, this head just snapped, and it was just like the edge, and it was not good. So we decided we are not doing that anymore. We're not using that company's stuff. So generally, I would say look for something that's maybe not the cheapest one out there, especially if they say it's for LARP or cosplay, this, that, and the other. Find one that's really meant for harnischechten, stage combat use, use something like that. And that's what these are. You'll notice that they are actually screwed in. So once we get it fitted, we add some tape to make sure it fits nice and solid. I think a lot of questions are how do you put these on. And in our case, we just make sure we added some tape. I think this one is like the medical wrap tape, just so that we can get a really, really tight fit. Once we have that, we drill out a little hole. There is actually two screws in this. One is here, and the other's on the other side, just to make sure this is really locked in and isn't going anywhere. For the butt spike on our spears, we just use a smaller, if I can slowly turn this around, smaller spear point. Same kind of end. It looks the same as the one I showed you earlier. This one only has one screw in it, but once again, we do tape the end, make sure it fits really tight, screw in a little bit hole, and then just put the screw in there to lock it down. And these work very, very well for us. They look very realistic because really they are, aside from that the point is blunted, they are real spears. The shaft on that one, and this is kind of important, you can buy the spear points relatively easily. There are several websites for weapons, armor, etc. that will sell you those things. However, those shafts we had to make ourselves. We did get some stock wood, ash wood. Those are 1 1/2 inch hexagonal, I believe they're hexagonal staves. And then we have to shave them down so that we can put the spear points on them. And that's the downside, is if you order these spear points, a lot of times they don't come with hafts, so you have to make them yourselves. We'll have that same problem we get to the Helgi stuff in the pollax section. But to keep in mind, to have spears like that, some people have used thinner, other types of poles. We find the ash at 1 1/2 inch is ridiculously solid. They are probably overbuilt. They are probably the cold steel of spears that we happen to use. But the plus side is they ain't going anywhere, but they are solid. They make you feel like when the Italians use the word lanza, we think lance. That feels like it should be a lance. That feels like I go on horseback and I can knock someone down and not worry about that breaking. So, is it a little bit probably overkill? Are you probably not going to be as fast as you can be with a lighter spear? Yeah, that's a fair assessment. But it also means that our equipment can last longer and can be more effective. Certainly in placing, we're not worrying about something snapping midway through a sparring match because they are so heavy and so well built. So with that, I'm going to move on to our pollaxes. Okay, so we're back with our pollaxes. And so just like the spears, I have two that are primarily used in our club. The first one is the Purple Heart Armory pollax. A couple of things about these. In my case, once again, these are kind of self-assembled. The worst part is putting on this rondel because you've got to kind of slide it down, and it is kind of a pain in the butt to put. But the good news is you can pick wherever you want to put it. So if you want to put it further down, you want to put it further up, you've got that option. And then it has the hammer end. This is the same spear point that's on the spear I showed you earlier. And as I said, on the back end, you have a choice. You can have that rubber cap that I showed you on the spear, or in this case, I have another spear point on here. And doesn't matter. Most people expect a pollax to have a butt spike. So this one does, but most people, even if they have the rubber cap on there, will treat it like it is a cap, butt spike. So you don't have to worry about that. The downside is, and I will quote Bob Charette on this, it doesn't really matter if you have a pound of steel or a pound of rubber, it's still going to hit like a pound of force. And so a lot of places have stopped using this particular poleaxe because of that. It has a lot of mass to it. I don't know if it's actually a pound or it isn't, but my point and the point that Bob was making with it, people have been concussed with these, even wearing a properly padded helmet. As a matter of fact, my first deed, when I went to it, I brought this one and I brought the other one that I'm going to show you next. And I said, yeah, you can't use the Purple Heart one. And he was like, yeah, that was the last time I got concussed. It was with one of those. And I have to mark those words that he said to me because they did stick with me. The last time I got concussed. So this was someone who had had experience with multiple concussions, who was like, yeah, we don't use those anymore. I use them for training. So within my club, if we all have our helmets off and I'm trying to teach someone the basic mechanics of how a poleaxe works, how to defend, how to attack, I will use this. It's a good weight. Like I had said earlier about the Purple Heart, you can buy this completed, so you don't have to worry about it, having to make your own shaft or anything else. So I think our club owns 3, like I own 2 and the club owns 1. But they're great for if I have to teach someone how to use the cross or the crosse and how to block a shot or how to throw it or how to reverse from the axe to the Q, from the Q to the dag, all of that stuff. These are really great trainers. It's just that be careful if you are sparring with them, kind of power down your shots. Also, you may want to clarify if you go to a deed event whether or not they'll allow you to use it. So those are my thoughts on it. But it's reasonably priced. It's a great trainer. Comes with the shaft already set up for you. So there's a lot of good things there, but there are some things to watch out for. If you are going to play with other people, make sure they're cool with you using it. These are kind of hard to get into shot only because ours are a little bit larger. But this is our main poleaxe that we use in the club. This is the Helgi's True History Workshop. There are others out there, Arkham, I forget the others. But basically it's a polyurethane head. This is not steel. I don't know any, well, I take that back. London Longsword Academy has used some of the Wells, I believe, Armory, the same ones that made my reproduction piece. Joseph over in England makes one that is a blunted steel poleaxe with blunted edges and blunted point. And you could use something like that. We don't. We still use synthetics, and I think a lot of other people do too. There are some groups that are really more about the reenactment than the, let's say, the HEMA part of it, and they'll go ahead and they'll do steel. That's no shade on London Longsword Academy. I think they are fantastic, and David is a wonderful resource to our community. But most people use our synthetic heads. This head is complete from here to the rondel point. People have often asked, well, how do you attach them? For the record, how we attach them is we have 3 screws. So we have 2 small screws here, then 1 large screw. The same thing on the other end. We just drill out the holes into the wood a little bit, and then we go ahead and we screw those in to secure them. This does require a fairly thick piece of wood for the head. A lot of other people do cut down the shaft. We actually leave it fairly thick. This, I believe, is the 1.5 to 1 3/4 hexagonal pole that we use for the spears as well. Can, once again, make it very, very bulky, but also very, very indestructible. And if you've seen people abuse pollaxes in tournament, which happens all the time, where people grab pretty close to the cue of the poleaxe and will swing, and someone will block it, and you'll always see what happens. If you shave it down, it breaks right here, which historically is what would have happened if you did that, which is why it's not really in the manuals to ever do that. I've seen people say, well, you could make longer languettes that would protect it. Not with that kind of force, and not with someone else striking at it with that force. If you thin this down, you're going to break it. This has worked out for us really well, though they have taken a licking and kept on ticking. I'll show you a part where it did hit the armor. And yeah, we filed that down like I talked about earlier with the wooden wasters. You just sand it a little bit, put some oil on it to, soften up the splintery area, and you're kind of good to go. And since we're wearing gauntlets, it's not really much of a concern. On the back end, like our spears, we do have those smaller spear points. We do have them capped with a rubber cap. Like before, these are not tape fitted, but they are. They do have a screw in there. The head is broken off, but it is actually in there on both sides of this particular spear point. So that's, once again, how we deal with butt spikes. These were not tape fitted, so they are a little looser. Probably when we reset these, we will take them out. We'll then go ahead and do a tape fitting because it just makes it a little bit nicer. But on this particular one, that is not the case. So I hope that helps explain to you the 4 types of weapons over these 2 videos. The spears and poleaxes in this video, and in the other video, the roundel daggers and the long swords. These are not the only weapons you can use in harnischechten, but they are the 4 most common. So having an understanding of that, you might pick what works best for you. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I do respond to people's questions about the different, anything that I do as far as a video. Even if you have questions about the chaperone, I'm happy to answer anything you'd like. And I hope that this has been enlightening, especially for newer people who are trying to get into harnischechten and wondering, well, what weapons do I use? How can I use them? Where should I get them? That's all a part of this. I would love to see more people doing harnischechten. So obviously, I'm here to promote, what you need in order to do it. So if you do have questions, even if they're not necessarily related to weapons, maybe they're related to armor, please leave your comments below, your questions, and I will try to answer them, as well as if I can't answer them in the comments, I may make them into my next video. So you're helping me by asking me questions. So once again, this is Ramirez with Tidewater Renaissance Fighting Arts. We're based out of Norfolk, Virginia. I will leave a link to our club below, and I will see you in the next video.